This is Deep Night Whispers. Tonight, we open a file that was never meant to be found. When people in this town speak about the night of November 12th, 1993, they do not use the word disappearance. They say the night the silence started. They say it like a season, like an illness, like something that arrived uninvited and stayed too long. In official records, the event is classified as a mass missing persons incident involving 33 high school students. Unofficially, it is still treated as a wound. The kind of wound that never closes and never fully bleeds. The town itself was small, smaller now than it was then. Barely a handful of blocks draped across the outline of a river bend. A place built on routine, on tradition, on people who believed nothing truly bad could happen where everyone knew everyone else's name. But the truth is this: places like these do not avoid disaster. They incubate it. In 1993, the heart of the town was its teenagers. They filled the grocery aisles on weekends. They clogged the school hallways. They loitered behind the diner after football games. Their laughter, sharp, chaotic, too loud, was the closest thing the town had to a pulse. Until one night, it stopped. All at once, 33 teenagers vanished. No trace, no witnesses, no survivors. Except for one, a boy named Elias Merritt. People called him One Eye, Eli, not out of affection, but out of habit. His accident at age 9 had left him with a milky, blind eye and a face the town struggled to look at directly. He grew up learning to angle his head so that the good eye would meet yours. A survival tactic, a courtesy the town rarely returned. By 17, Eli was no longer teased. He had simply been excluded. He moved through school like a shadow, cast too short to notice. He wasn't invited to birthday parties, or bonfires, or the makeshift traditions that teenagers develop when adults aren't watching. So, when the others planned a private celebration by the river that night, of course, he wasn't invited. They didn't even discuss it. He was simply never considered. This is the part the town refuses to say aloud. Eli survived because they excluded him. But on the morning of November 13th, logic was irrelevant. Fear needed a shape. Grief needed a target. And he was the only one left. When the sheriff knocked on Eli's trailer door at 8:43 a.m., the boy stepped outside wearing the same hoodie he'd slept in. His expression was neutral, the expression of someone who had no idea his world had burned down clockwise around him. Neighbors stood in the street. Whispers moved like insects through the air. Why is he the only one? He knows something. He wasn't with them. Why? Maybe he finally snapped. Maybe he finally got even. A town does not need evidence to build a theory. It only needs a feeling. And the feeling was unanimous. The abandoned cars were found by noon. 3 parked near the old bridge, 2 hidden behind the trees. The others scattered along the dirt pull-offs leading down to the river. Keys still in ignitions. Heaters still warm. One door left open, rain pooled in the footwell. Signs of a sudden rush. Signs of panic. Signs of something no one wanted to imagine. The sheriff questioned Eli in a beige room with a humming light fixture and a camera that clicked whenever someone shifted. The boy sat with his hands folded, his head tilted just slightly so the good eye faced forward. He answered every question plainly. No, he wasn't at the river. No, he didn't know about the party. No, he didn't see anyone leave the night before. No, he didn't hear anything unusual. No, he didn't have friends among the missing. Yes, he was home all evening. Yes, he was alone. The sheriff's notes from that interview include a single sentence. If he's lying, he's the calmest liar I've ever seen. But Eli wasn't calm. He was in shock, because in small towns, loneliness is routine. But being the only surviving teenager is not. By late afternoon, search teams spread through the woods. Deputies followed the old footpaths teenagers used. Parents waded waist-deep into the river, screaming their children's names. Dogs barked at currents too fast to track. Volunteers scanned the banks for footprints, jackets, anything that might tell them where the 33 went. But water is an excellent thief. At sunset, the river swallowed the light. By midnight, it looked clean and quiet again, as if it had never risen, never raged, never taken anything at all. Rumors began forming immediately. The kids ran away. A cult took them. They overdosed. They made a pact. Someone lured them into the woods. And always Ellie's name sat in the middle of the theories like a stone dropped in a pond. He wasn't one of them, they said. He wasn't at the party. He was home alone. He was always watching, always listening. He was quiet, strange, unpredictable. He was different. And difference is enough to convict someone in a town this small. No one spoke publicly about the bullying, not then, not later. The purpose of bullying is not just cruelty. It is creation. It creates distance. It creates a story. And in the aftermath, the town picked that story up and carried it like a torch. He was jealous. He was angry. He finally broke. He hurt them. He hid them. He did something no normal boy would do. No one paused to consider the truer, simpler explanation, that while they laughed, drank, and stood too close to the water's edge, Eli Merritt was in his bed, listening to the rain, listening to music, listening to a world he was never invited into. He survived because he wasn't wanted. But the town was not ready for that truth. Not yet. The investigation into the missing 33 didn't begin with hope. It began with assumption. Assumption is faster than evidence, cleaner than grief, easier than admitting that an entire generation can vanish in a single night without reason. On the morning of November 13th, 1993, the sheriff's office treated the incident as a runaway event. 33 teenagers leaving town at once seemed impossible, but so was the alternative. By noon, that illusion collapsed. Search teams reached the river's elbow first. The scene they found was striking in its simplicity. Empty cans scattered across the rocks, a cooler half buried in mud, a scrap of plaid fabric snagged on a broken branch, boot prints, sneaker prints, a single tire rut where someone tried to back out of the clearing too fast. Nothing unusual for a teenage gathering. Nothing that suggested mass death or mass disappearance. Until the deputies walked closer to the water. The river had risen nearly 3 feet overnight. The storm had hit harder here than anywhere else in the county. The elbow, normally calm, was churning. And on the far side of the bank, wedged between 2 roots, They found the first shoe, a white canvas sneaker, size 7, untied, clean, too clean. It hadn't been worn into the mud. It hadn't been trampled in panic. It had drifted. One deputy wrote in his report, it looked placed, not in the human sense, in the river's sense. The shoe was identified within the hour. It belonged to a girl named Lauren Kane, 17, honor roll, cheer team, missing. The discovery should have clarified things. Instead, it sharpened the confusion. The river could take one, maybe two, but 33. Even the most pessimistic volunteer doubted that number. Parents gathered at the elbow, arms wrapped around themselves, faces wet from rain and crying. Deputies marked the ground with tape. Dogs sniffed uselessly at the water's surface. Photographers documented everything. The sheriff, Sheriff Mallory, kept glancing at Eli. Eli stood apart from everyone, leaning against the hood of a cruiser, hands jammed into the pocket of his hoodie. 33 kids had been here. He had not. 33 kids had vanished. He had not. The numbers did what numbers always do. They supported the story people already wanted to believe. Back at the station, the interview began again. Same questions, same answers, same tilt of the head to expose the good eye, same calm that the sheriff mistook for arrogance. Eli asked one question in return. Are they okay? To which the sheriff replied, do you know something we don't? The boy looked confused, or maybe exhausted. No, he said. I just feel like something happened. The sheriff wrote in his notes, claims intuition, possible manipulation. But Eli wasn't manipulating anyone. He was stating what everyone else already knew in their bones. Something catastrophic had happened at the river. The investigators kept their focus narrow. Too narrow. They searched the woods. They searched the banks. They searched the trails teenagers used to sneak out. But they did not search upstream. Upstream was outside county jurisdiction. Upstream was someone else's problem. Upstream required paperwork. They searched everything, except the place the storm had originated. By dusk, the first body should have surfaced. But it didn't. That's when the town's fear calcified. Fear always wants a face. Someone to attach itself to. Eli was that face. His name spread through grocery store aisles, through church pews, through the diner booths, where locals whispered behind coffee cups. He didn't go. Why? He hated those kids. He's always been strange. He used to watch them from the bus. He's lying. He knows something. None of it was evidence. It was comfort. People will believe anything if it keeps them from believing the truth. Meanwhile, Eli sat in a windowless room beneath a fluorescent light that flickered every 11 seconds. The sheriff asked him again, "Why didn't you go to the river last night?" Eli answered, "I wasn't invited." The sheriff pressed, "Would you have gone if you were?" Eli hesitated for the first time. A long silence. Then, yes. The sheriff underlined the word in his notebook 3 times. Outside, the sky darkened. The rain eased. The river leveled. The parents waited. At 10:43 p.m., a deputy radioed in. His voice was shaking. They had found something upstream. Not evidence. Not a clue. A cluster of debris wedged under a fallen tree. Branches. Rope, plastic cups, a torn jacket sleeve. Something impossible, all upstream, against the flow. The sheriff dismissed it as storm scatter. The deputies accepted that. But the investigator went the next morning, before dawn, before the town stirred. And what he found changed the shape of the story. The debris was real. The items were real. But there was something else. Pressed into the mud beside the fallen log was a line of footprints, 33 of them, side by side, perfectly aligned, leading toward the river's narrowest point. Not one set out of order, not one set veering away. As if 33 teenagers walked willingly into deep water, one after another, in total silence. The sheriff dismissed the finding. The investigator did not. That was the moment he realized the truth. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't a runaway. This wasn't a murder. This was a tragedy. A simple, horrific accident. The teens weren't taken. They weren't lured. They weren't trapped. They drowned, all of them. Panic, flash flooding, wet logs, slippery rocks, drunk teenagers at the wrong bend of the river, at the exact wrong moment. But the town didn't want tragedy. Tragedy has no villain. And they needed a villain. They needed a boy with one eye, who had been left out by the very kids who died. The investigator closed his notebook that night and looked at the river. The water was calm again, smooth, silent. This is where the truth usually ends. But in this town, the truth was twisted into something else entirely. Because the next morning, the sheriff announced the first official suspect in the disappearance of 33 students, Elias Merritt. The boy who lived because no one wanted him there. The announcement came at 9:12 a.m. The sheriff stood on the courthouse steps with rainwater still dripping from the brim of his hat. The microphones didn't work properly. The reporters were from 2 towns over. The parents waited behind the barricades, shivering though the morning air was mild. The sheriff cleared his throat and read from a prepared statement, his voice flat. Elias J. Merritt is now a person of interest. He didn't say suspect, but everyone heard guilty. The town inhaled sharply, as if something had clicked into place, as if the chaos finally had a shape. The investigator, my predecessor in this file, stood to the side, watching the announcement, jaw tight. He wrote only one line in his field notes. They need a culprit more than they need truth. Eli was brought back inside the station. He did not ask why. He did not ask who accused him. He did not cry. He did not deny anything. He simply folded his hands in his lap and waited for the next question. The sheriff asked how much he hated the other kids. Eli said he didn't hate them. He just didn't know them. The sheriff asked where he kept his knives. Eli said he had one pocket knife for fishing. He didn't fish much anymore. The sheriff asked why he didn't join the others at the river. Eli repeated the same 2 words he had said since dawn. I wasn't invited. To the sheriff, that sounded like motive. To the town, it sounded like bitterness. To the investigator, it sounded like the truth. Meanwhile, the search moved back upstream. Not because the sheriff ordered it, but because nature itself forced the issue. When the river receded, it revealed something the water had buried. 2 backpacks lodged against a rock wall. half a dozen crushed soda cans sealed under driftwood, a torn letterman's jacket with the name Caleb stitched on the sleeve, all facing upstream, all caught in the same direction. The investigator realized immediately what the sheriff refused to consider. The storm had reversed the river. For 16 minutes, confirmed later using weather data and current modeling, the flash flood had been violent enough to push debris upriver before collapsing back toward the elbow. 16 minutes. That's all it took for the river to become a trap. Those teenagers never had a chance. At 5:47 p.m., a plume of oil-streaked foam was spotted downstream, strong, chemical-scented, clinging to the banks. The kind of residue you see when a car goes underwater. Divers were deployed. They found the first vehicle within 90 minutes, a sedan. The windows shattered inward, the interior smeared with river silt. No bodies inside. The water had taken them. Flash floods do not ask for instructions. They do not sort people gently. They do not leave things where they found them. They pull, they twist, they steal. The sheriff refused to release the findings. He insisted the river was a distraction. He insisted that teenagers don't all drown together. He insisted someone orchestrated it. And the someone he insisted on was always the same: the boy with one eye. The town followed that lead with the devotion of people who would rather face a lie than a nightmare. Parents stopped making eye contact with each other. They stopped praying together. They stopped speaking to Eli's grandmother at the grocery store. Someone threw a rock through Eli's trailer window. Someone carved "freak" into the hood of his mother's old car. Someone followed him home from school 2 weeks earlier before any of this happened, and now that old fear resurfaced like debris from the river. Fear never forgets what shape it prefers. The investigator returned to the river alone that night. The storm clouds had finally cleared. The moonlit water was still, as if exhausted. Fragments of clothing clung to the reeds. A cassette tape case floated face down, cracked open like a jaw. He knelt by the bank and studied the mud. The river level had dropped enough to reveal faint impressions, not footprints this time, but drag marks. Long, smooth drag marks. The kind left when water tries to pull bodies downstream, and the shoreline tries to hold them momentarily before finally letting go. He knew then the enormity of what happened, and he knew exactly how the town would respond: by ignoring it. Grief was too heavy. Blame was lighter. Blame had a face. Blame had a name: Elias Merritt. The next morning, the investigator requested Eli be temporarily released from questioning. The sheriff refused. The investigator insisted. The sheriff threatened to remove him from the case. The conflict is recorded in the report, though heavily redacted. Only one sentence survives clearly: we must stop interrogating this boy for a crime committed by the river. The sheriff crossed it out in red ink. Meanwhile, Elias sat alone in the interview room. He wasn't handcuffed. He wasn't violent. He wasn't resisting. He was simply still. When asked later what he remembered from those hours, he said, "I kept thinking, if I had been there, I would have drowned too." And that single sentence should have been enough to end the suspicion. Instead, it sealed it. To the sheriff, it sounded like guilt. To the town, it sounded like confession. To the investigator, it sounded like a child trying to understand why he survived something meant for everyone but him. By day 3, the river began returning bodies, one at a time, quietly, with the sorrow of a thief returning stolen things too late. And with each recovery, the truth became harder to deny. The river had taken them, the storm had killed them, bad luck had chosen them, and absence had spared One-Eye Eli. But the town wasn't ready for truth. No one is ready to face the reality that their children didn't die from cruelty, but from randomness. Because randomness cannot be punished. And grief without punishment is unbearable. So they punished the boy they had punished all his life. The river does not care about justice, but people do. And when people cannot find it, they build something else in its place. When the first body surfaced, it was almost delicate. A fisherman found her at dawn, snagged in a slow eddy near the rocks. Her hair had fanned out in the current, dark strands stretched like riverweed. Her eyes were half open. Her hands were empty. Her name was Hannah Cooper, 16, honor roll student, missing for 3 days. The coroner's report was precise. Cause of death, drowning. No signs of restraint. No blunt force trauma. No defensive wounds. Alcohol in her bloodstream. Rainwater in her lungs. Every detail pointed in the same direction. She slipped, fell in, and the river did the rest. The town did not accept that. By the time the second and third bodies surfaced downstream, the narrative had already formed. They didn't fall. They didn't slip. They were driven. They were chased. They were tricked. By who? The answer was waiting. A boy with one eye, one who had been left out. The investigator went through each recovered body's report. He saw the same pattern over and over. Bruising consistent with impact against rocks. Limbs scraped by debris. Water damage. Nothing else. No knives. No cords. No substances other than alcohol. The storm in the river had done all of it. But outside the morgue, grief was busy rewriting the story. A mother said, "My son was strong. He knew how to swim. Someone must have held him down." A father said, "My daughter was careful. She wouldn't stand so close to the water, not unless someone scared her." The pastor said, "This is not an accident. This is a reckoning." No one said, "This is what happens when 33 drunk teenagers gather at a flooded river in the dark. Accidents feel like insults from God. Blame feels like control." Inside the station, Eli was shown pictures, not of the bodies, of the riverbank. The sheriff pushed the photographs across the metal table. "Look at these," he said. "You recognize that place?" "Yes," Eli said. "That's the elbow. Everyone knows it." "Why weren't you there?" The same question again. The same answer again. "I wasn't invited." The sheriff tried a different angle. "Did you want to be there?" Eli looked at the images for a long time. The fire pits kicked over. The broken bottles. The empty space where people had stood laughing a few days earlier. "Yes," he said quietly. "I wanted to be anywhere someone wanted me." The sheriff underlined that line in his notes. Later, he would repeat it to the parents, like a confession. Outside of the interview room, the investigator had started reconstructing the timeline. He mapped out the calls made that night. Who phoned who borrowed whose car, who sent last-minute messages, who complained about the storm in half-asleep journal entries. The pattern was easy to see. Plans, alcohol, the elbow, the storm. Every teenager who disappeared had some link to the party, everyone except Eli. He had nothing. No calls, no notes, no witnesses. He existed outside the event like a glitch in a recording. That should have exonerated him. In a different town, at a different time, with different people in charge, it might have. Here, it condemned him. At the vigil, the pastor mentioned him without saying his name. "We must pray," he said, "for those among us who allowed resentment to dwell in their hearts. Resentment is a doorway. Dark things walk through doorways." The crowd understood. They didn't need the name. They turned their faces away when Eli's grandmother lit a candle. They shifted their chairs. They talked softly, with their hands over their mouths. 33 candles in a row. And one boy standing alone in the dark. The investigator approached him afterwards. Eli didn't flinch. He didn't ask to be believed. He only asked one question. "Do you think they were scared?" That's what haunted him. Not whether he would be blamed, not whether he would be arrested. He wanted to know if the last minutes of 33 lives were pure panic. The investigator, bound to the truth, answered him. "Yes," he said. "I think at least some of them were." Eli nodded once and went quiet. From that point on, the town's suspicion hardened into something else. Certainty. Rumors mutated into claims. People began saying they remembered things they hadn't seen. I saw him watching the bridge all the time. He used to stare at my son's car. He walked past our house the night before it happened. I heard him say once, "You'll all be sorry." None of it made it into the official record. All of it made it into the unofficial one. The one people tell each other at kitchen tables and in the frozen aisle of the store. The investigator logged each story, marked it, and quietly noted where it fell apart. The man who always saw Eli near the bridge. He worked the nights 2 counties away. The woman who claimed Eli had threatened her son. Her son had written Cyclops in marker across Eli's locker 3 years earlier. The neighbor who said she saw Eli out late that night. Weather data and power line reports proved the streetlights on her block were out by 10:30. Truth, as always, was slower than rumor. Then the last piece of physical evidence surfaced. A branch on the far bank was found peeled of bark, smoothed by repeated contact. On the mud below it, the investigator found faint letters carved with something sharp. The water had blurred the edges, but the message was still legible. "Sorry, Mom. Not a killer's note. Not a monster's taunt. The last words of a child who understood the river had done something final." The investigator photographed it, logged it, circled it in his report. The sheriff looked at the image and said, "They could have been forced to write that." He had decided, long ago, what kind of story he preferred. It's easier to imagine a murderer among you than to accept that your children slipped, panicked, grabbed for each other, and drowned anyway. As more bodies were recovered, the pattern didn't change. Water. Blunt trauma. No foul play. The story should have closed there. It didn't. Because the town couldn't live with a tragedy without intent. Someone had to mean it. And the only person who hadn't been given a chance to die with the others was the boy they'd all agreed not to invite. The boy with one eye. The next step wasn't written down in any official document. You can see it only in fragments, in complaints that never became charges, in hospital logs that never named who caused the injuries, in broken glass that no one swept up for days. It began with a hallway confrontation, a shove, a whispered accusation. You should have been there. You did this. You cursed us. Why are you still here? Then came the first punch. It landed just below Eli's blind eye. He didn't swing back. He didn't raise his hands. He just stood there and took it. And that, more than anything, terrified the investigator, because he recognized that look. It was the look of someone who had already decided something about himself. That he deserved it. That surviving something you were never invited to be part of is its own kind of crime. In the next part, the investigator will uncover the full sequence of the river accident, and we move toward the final reveal. What truly happened that night, and why the one-eyed boy will always carry the blame for something he never even saw. There is a point in every investigation where the evidence stops being a collection of facts and begins to behave like a mirror. It reflects not what happened, but what people want to see. By the fourth day, the river had returned 7 bodies. 7 different stories, whispered the same way. They fell. They panicked. They fought the current. They lost. But the town refused to read that version. They read something else entirely. Rumors sharpened. Suspicion calcified. And the boy with one eye, the one who had been left out his entire life, became the piece that didn't fit. Which meant he had to be cut. The investigator documented the shift in tone. It began in small ways. Neighbors closing their blinds when Eli walked past. Parents grabbing their younger kids by the shoulders, guiding them across the street. People whispering in the sheriff's office, in the diner, in the church parking lot. No one said it out loud, but the town had quietly decided that Eli wasn't simply a suspect. He was cursed. He was wrong. He was the shadow left over from the storm. He was the living reminder of the accident they still refused to accept. The investigator noted something else, a detail most people overlooked. None of the recovered bodies had signs of struggle. All had signs of slipping, mud under the fingernails, pebble abrasions on the knees, blunt trauma on the forearms and ribs, the kind you get from fighting water, not a person. And every corpse had water in the lungs. Not one of them had been dead before entering the river. This was the truth. They died trying to breathe. But truth is not a strong enough force to stop fear. When the autopsy reports were quietly shared with the sheriff, he folded the papers with the same deliberate calm as a man closing a book he had no intention of reading again. "We can't rule out involvement," he said. "We can rule out homicide," the investigator responded. "No, we can't," the sheriff insisted. "If we do that, we have to call this an accident, and 33 kids don't just accidentally die." The investigator wrote in his notes, "Denial is more powerful than evidence." That evening, a town meeting was held in the high school gymnasium. Rows of folding chairs, muted voices, a hollow space where hope should have been. Eli sat in the back, not by choice, by instruction. People refused to allow him near the center aisle. It wasn't obvious. No one shoved him, but when he approached, bodies shifted, legs extended, backs turned. The message was clear. Stay behind us. The sheriff stood on stage, in front of the basketball hoop. He spoke in a voice meant to soothe, but sharpened by urgency. "We have reason to believe," he said, "that these disappearances are not natural." A low murmur rippled through the gym. "We cannot rule out foul play. We must consider all possibilities." All eyes turned toward the back row. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow, collective rotation of suspicion. The investigator watched Eli shrink into his chair, shoulders folding forward, chin dipping, as if he could make himself disappear through sheer effort. But invisibility is not possible for someone everyone chooses to see. The investigator stood and challenged the sheriff publicly. "There is no evidence of violence. There is evidence of flood patterns. Current analysis supports drowning." Some nodded. Most didn't. A mother stood, trembling. "You didn't know my son. He was a strong swimmer." A father shouted. "They didn't drown. Somebody made them run." Another screamed. "We all know who hated them the most." Eli stared at the floor. The investigator stared at the crowd. The sheriff stared at the opportunity. "Let us not jump to conclusions," he asked coldly, "but we must follow every lead." That sentence, meant to sound neutral, was a match thrown into gasoline. Behind the gym, after the meeting, violence finally took shape. 4 boys cornered Eli behind the dumpsters. They weren't strangers. They had bullied him for years. "You did this. You made this happen. You wanted us gone. You think you're special now." The investigator arrived seconds too late, just in time to pull them off. Just in time to see Eli on the ground, hands shielding the blind side of his face, blood smeared across his sleeve. The sheriff dismissed the assault as emotional stress. No charges, no consequences. Because in the eyes of the town, beating the boy who survived felt like balance. The investigator recorded every detail in his report, but he knew already. The town had made its decision. This was not an investigation anymore. It was a purge. The next morning, the river returned 3 more bodies, spaced miles apart, proof of the flash flood's deadly force. And in the pocket of one boy's jeans, the investigator found something that ended all doubt: a disposable camera. Water damaged, cracked, but salvageable. He rushed it to the lab. The technicians dried the film gently, ran it through the processor, and delivered the images 1 hour later. They told the whole story. The kids laughing, drinking, standing too close to the edge. Rain starting, people shouting, a girl slipping, a boy grabbing her arm and slipping too. A chain reaction of bodies losing balance, chaos under a dark sky, flashlights dropping, water splashing. And then in the final frame, a smear of river water, blurred motion, a flashlight beam slicing through darkness. No murderer, no attacker, no one standing behind them, not even Eli. The truth was printed on paper, undeniable and tragic. A mass accident, a storm, a river, one misstep. But the town wasn't ready to see the pictures. And the sheriff wasn't willing to show them. He sealed the packet in an evidence folder and stored it behind his desk. The investigator confronted him. "This proves it. he said. "This clears that boy. This shows what really happened." The sheriff closed the drawer. "No," he replied. "This would destroy the town. Truth can't destroy a town." The sheriff's voice went low. "Grief can." The investigator understood then. The truth wasn't going to save Eli. It was going to isolate him further. Because once the town accepted that the river had taken their children, they would ask a new, darker question. Why didn't it take him? And the only answer they'd find was the one they'd already chosen. He wasn't one of them. He never had been. And surviving something that killed everyone else is a burden no 17-year-old should ever bear. But Eli would, because in the morning, the river would return one final piece of evidence, one that would unravel the last remaining threads of the town's hope and point the investigator toward the only conclusion that mattered. The final truth did not surface like a revelation. It arrived quietly, the way most devastating truths do. On the morning of November 17th, 5 days after the disappearance, the river returned the last body. A boy named Tyler Hensley, 17, track team, popular, bulletproof, according to his friends. They pulled him from a shallow bend 2 miles downstream. His arms were scraped raw from trying to hold onto submerged roots. His knuckles were split, his fingernails broken. But the detail that mattered most was inside his closed fist. A scrap of fabric, blue and white, cotton. The same cotton pattern found on 2 other recovered bodies, the same color worn by half the teenagers that night. Tyler hadn't been fighting a person. He'd been fighting the current, and had simply grabbed whatever was closest as the water spun him into the dark. The investigator logged the detail. He compared it to the disposable camera photographs. He matched the fabric patterns. He confirmed the flood model. The story was airtight. All 33 teenagers drowned in a flash storm during an unsupervised celebration at the river. They were intoxicated, unprepared, and overwhelmed by a surge of water that no one could have predicted. A tragedy, pure and brutal. The sheriff refused to accept it. "Coincidence doesn't kill 33 kids," he said. "Flash floods do." The investigator replied, "Not like this." "Yes," the investigator said, "exactly like this." Their argument lasted 10 minutes, then 20, then escalated into shouting that echoed through the station walls. Finally, the investigator closed the folder containing the photographs and placed it directly on the sheriff's desk. "This boy is innocent," he said, "and you will destroy him to avoid facing an accident." The sheriff didn't look at the photographs. He didn't open the folder. He didn't read a single report. He simply said, "People are not ready for that kind of accident." The investigator understood then. This wasn't about guilt. It wasn't about evidence. It was about control. When a town loses 33 children, chaos becomes a living presence. Chaos takes shape in the streets, in the church pews, in the hallways of the school. And to fight chaos, the town needed a villain. They chose the easiest one, Elias Merritt. Eli himself was quiet in those days, not defiant, not angry, just diminished. He stopped answering questions. He stopped making eye contact. He stopped defending himself. He behaved like someone who finally believed what people whispered about him, that he was cursed, that he was wrong, that he should have been taken too. The investigator tried to speak with him outside the station after yet another round of questioning. Eli stood by the vending machine, hands in his pockets, head tilted slightly to expose his good eye. The investigator asked, "Why didn't you tell anyone how badly they treated you?" Eli shrugged. "It doesn't matter," he said. "It matters to me," the investigator replied. Eli stared at the floor. "You can't undo it," he said softly. "You can't bring them back. You can't change what people think I am." The investigator wrote that line down later. He believes he deserves blame simply because he survived exclusion. He knew then how deep the damage went. Not from the storm, not from the river, from the years before it. On November 20th, the town held a memorial service. 33 names read aloud, 33 candles lit. 33 families seated in the first rows. Eli sat in the very back, alone. The chair beside him empty. As the pastor spoke, as parents wept into each other's shoulders, the investigator watched Eli's expression. Not guilt, not anger, not fear, grief. The grief of someone who had wanted desperately to belong to the very group that drowned. When the pastor said, "We pray for the souls taken by the river," Eli whispered something, a single sentence. The investigator, seated behind him, heard it clearly. "I should have been there." Those 6 words were the closest thing he ever gave to a confession, not of guilt, but of longing. A longing so deep it twisted itself into self-blame. When the service ended, the investigator tried, one last time, to force the truth into the sheriff's hands. He brought the photographs, the flood model, the autopsy reports, the drag marks, the footprints, the timeline. "This is it," he said. "This is the full picture. You have to show this to the families." The sheriff closed the file. "Not yet," he said. "When?" the investigator demanded. "When they're ready." "They'll never be ready," the investigator shot back. "That's why," the sheriff replied, "we give them what they can handle." "And what they can handle," the investigator said, "is blaming a child?" The sheriff didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence was the answer. And so, the town stayed in its illusion. Eli became the ghost of their anger, the target of a grief too large to acknowledge. The truth of that night remained buried in a floodplain of denial. But the river remembers. The investigator wrote the final line of his report months later, just before leaving the county for good. 33 children died because they were together. One survived because he was alone. And because he was alone, the town decided he must be the cause. But the river knows the truth. It took those who came too close, and it spared the one boy who never had the chance to be a part of them.